This is a HeadGum podcast.
Thinx is a period-proof underwear designed to hold up to 2 tampons worth of the Crimson Wave. Remember that throwback from Clueless? Thinx has got 4 layers of tech that makes them antimicrobial, moisture-wicking, absorbent, and leak-resistant. And Thinx is designed to keep you dry all day long and are super thin, so it's very, very comfortable to wear. Curious? We know you are, so how about this? We're going to give you $5 off of your order with the code BlackGirlNerds at the checkout. Use the code BlackGirlNerds, you get $5 off of Thinx panties. That is Thinx with an X. Pick up Pieces in Space, the brand new album from rapper, producer, PhD student, and Black Girl Nerd Samus today. Tracks from her project have appeared on NPR, Vibe, The Mary Sue, among other publications. So get your choice of vinyl, CD, or digital copies of the album at samusmusic.com. That is SAMMUS music.com.
Hi, this is Liz Femi. I'm an actress co-starring on Send Me, an original web series, and you're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hi, I'm Sujata Day. I'm playing Sarah on Insecure, and you're listening to Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hey, I'm Effie Brown, and I'm a producer of Dear White People, Real Women Have Curves, and recently you probably saw me on HBO's Project Greenlight. And you are listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
I'm Johnny J, a creator of A Tribe Called Geek, and you're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Hey, this is Francesca Ramsey, but everyone online knows me as Cheska Lee, and you are listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast, and it's dope.
I am Micheline Hess. I'm the artist and writer of Malice in Ovenland and the Island Cats of Congaree, as well as the Anansi Kids Club and the All Saints Day Adventure, and you're listening to the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Five, 6, 7, 8. Holla boys and girls, it's the BGN. Coming from the Marvel world to the DC friends. All the way from Hollywood to the PCN. She defends everyone from sleazy men. Won't apologize for spitting Shonda rhymes. The space that we make is never colonized. We're talking games and movies and actors. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Yeah, better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Ha. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds.
Thanks for tuning into episode 95 of the Black Girl Nerds podcast. My name is Jamie, and I am your host. This episode is titled Nerdy History, Superheroines, and Women of Color in Comics. 3 segments. In our first segment, we invite Alelia Bundles. She is the great-great-granddaughter of the legendary Madam C.J. Walker. She talks to us about Madam C.J. Walker's history, as well as her 30-year career working as a TV executive in NBC News and ABC News. That segment is co-hosted by Marqueeda and Joy. In our second segment, we invite English-born actress Kyla Frye, the star of The Few, where she plays a superheroine. She's also appeared in films such as Edge of Tomorrow, starring Tom Cruise. That segment is a one-on-one hosted by KB. In our third segment, we head over to New York Comic Con and listen in on a panel led by Regine L. Sawyer, the founder of Women in Comics Collective. On that panel that she moderates features Barbara Brandon Croft, Carol Burrell, Shay Grayson, Jules Rivera, and Camille Zhang. So that's the show for you. Thanks so much for tuning in, and please feel free to spread the word about the Black Girl Nerds podcast. Give us a rating on iTunes, subscribe to us, follow us on all different streams. We're all over the place now. Not only can you find us there, but you can find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, Spreaker, Google Play Music, and Spotify. So this is BGN 95, Nerdy History, Superheroines, and Women of Color in Comics coming at you. Author and journalist A'Lelia Bundles chairs the board of the National Archives Foundation and is the vice chairman of Columbia University's Board of Trustees. She is the founder of Madam Walker Family Archives and is also the historical advisor for Madam C.J. Walker Beauty Culture, a line of hair care products inspired by her great-great-grandmother and manufactured by Sundial Brands. Ms. Bundles is at work on her fourth book, The Joy Goddess of Harlem, A'Lelia Walker and the Harlem Renaissance, a biography of her great-great-grandmother, whose parties and arts patronage helped define that era. On her own ground, The Life and Times of Madam C.J. Walker was named a New York Times notable book. Ms. Bundles was a network television news executive producer for 30 years at NBC News and then at ABC News, where she was Washington, D.C.'s Deputy Bureau Chief. Thank you so much for tuning into this segment of the Black Girl Nerds podcast. My name is Jamie. I am your host. Very excited for this segment today, especially for you fans out there that are history nerds, that are really into a lot of the work that has been done in television over the years. And if you are a fan and an admirer of the legendary Madam C.J. Walker, then you're definitely going to love this interview. I have here A'Lelia Bundles. She chairs the board of the National Archives Foundation and is the vice chairman of Columbia University's Board of Trustees and the great-granddaughter to the legendary Madam C.J. Walker. Thank you, Ms. Bundles, so much for coming on our show.
Oh, just really delighted to be with you.
And we have our lovely, lovely co-hosts, Marqueeda and Joy. Thank you for coming on.
Of course.
Thank you for having us.
Excellent. So, yes, I'm really honored, and it's such a pleasure to have you come and chat with us. And I really want to know a little bit about you. I know you came up as a journalist with a 30-year history as a TV executive for NBC News and later ABC News. What led you to journalism, and what was the climate like in network TV at that time?
Well, when I was 8 years old, I wrote a little short story, and I really was bitten by the writing bug. I realized that I could create an atmosphere, and one of my mother's friends liked the story so much that she sent it into a magazine and got it published. So when I was 8, I had a little byline, and that really started me on my passion for writing. And then I just continued to write. I worked for the junior high school newspaper and then the high school newspaper. And then when I was in college, I wanted to have a little bit more fun. So I was a DJ, a jazz DJ. But I had really had that bug about to be a journalist and to pursue my writing in some way. So that's what led to the career in journalism. And now what it was like, what the atmosphere was like in the early 70s. So, this was, I'm really on that cusp of women who are part of the affirmative action era and who are women who are, for whom corporations opened up. And so I was right on that moment when women sued Newsweek and sued the television networks, because when women came into those corporations, they remained researchers and the guys became producers. And so, or the women remained researchers and the guys became reporters at the magazines and at the newspapers. So I really benefited from some of the pioneers who were just ahead of me in that generation. And I benefited from it after I graduated from Columbia's journalism school. I had a fellowship from NBC, and I went to work at NBC and worked my way up to a producer and then deputy bureau chief at ABC and director of talent development. But it was, very much, there were very few women, and the atmosphere was a locker room atmosphere, as we've been hearing about. But I also was really fortunate to have some great mentors especially early in my career, most of whom were men who were, just really enlightened, and then later some, women who were very key and very supportive.
That's amazing. As I mentioned in your bio, your great-grandmother, Madam C.J. Walker, is prolific in so many ways, and most notably known as the first black female millionaire. For the few of us who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about her legacy, as well as the current work that you're doing to preserve your family's history?
Sure. So, as you say, many people know about Madam Walker, but many, many don't. And she really was a pioneer of the modern hair care industry. So what many people know is that she had something to do with hair. She did not invent the straightening comb or the perm, but she developed a line of hair care products that, at a time when most Americans didn't have indoor plumbing, they didn't wash their hair very often, so they had really horrible scalp infections and scalp disease. So she developed a shampoo and an ointment that contained sulfur that healed the scalp and allowed the hair to grow back. So it was really something that was very needed, something that was pretty basic but hadn't really been around for a while. And the thing that I love about it is that she started a business and taught other women how to do the Madam Walker system so they could make their own money independently and educate their children and buy real estate. So she developed an army of sales agents, and in 1917, at her first convention of her sales agents, 2 years before Mary Kay was born, she gave prizes to the women who sold the most products, but also to the women who had contributed the most to charity and who were involved in political activities. So it wasn't just about hair, it was about political activism, being a philanthropist, supporting black schools, supporting the anti-lynching movement. So she was Black Lives Matter in 1916.
Wow. And you're currently doing some work right now to help preserve her history as well as your family's legacy. Can you tell us a little bit what you're doing now?
Sure. So in graduate school at Columbia, I began to really write about Madam Walker. I wrote a paper, and then that has led to 3 books about her and a postage stamp and collecting her photographs and letters and, really being kind of the keeper of the flame. So I participate in several different things. The Madam Walker Theater Center in Indianapolis is a National Historic Landmark. I'm a board member emeritus of that. I maintain the Madam Walker Family Archives and recently contributed a number of items, about 12 to 15 items, to the new National Museum of African American History and Culture. And I also am the historical advisor for the new line of Madam C.J. Walker Beauty Culture products that are manufactured by Sundial Brands and available at Sephora. So I've got a lot of little balls in the air.
Most definitely. Very, very awesome. Madame C.J. Walker's legacy is immense and profound in its reach, and I was hoping you would share with us what you think how her legacy impacts us today.
But the thing that I am so pleased about is that she still can inspire people, and she's so multidimensional. As an entrepreneur, women can really look to her and see how many obstacles she overcame. And she was an orphan at 7 and married at 14, a widow at 20 with a child, no real formal education, and yet she had so much perseverance and resilience that she educated herself with the help of others and then created a business so people can see somebody overcoming obstacles. But whether I'm talking to students who are at Harvard Business School or whether I'm talking to women who are at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, they can find something about her life that is relevant to them. So it's just a privilege and a real opportunity to be able to tell her story to people and help them find their own space in her story, but also American history. I mean, I think it's so important for us, especially as Black women, to see how we fit into this American narrative, because we have been intentionally written out of it often, and or our story has been neglected. But when you know what Madam Walker's life was like and what all of our grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers went through and the way that they paved for us, we can see how we fit into the making of this nation.
Wow, that is amazing. So I want to get into your nerd cred. You are the current chair and president of the board of directors of the National Archive Foundation, and you maintain Madame Walker Family Archives. Would you say you're a history nerd?
Yes, I'm a proud history nerd.
Yay!
Absolutely. I was just doing some reflection on my childhood. One of my some friends' mother died earlier this week, and she was 85. She had a really fabulous life, but I was thinking about the village that raised me and all of these people who knew I was a little bookworm with my glasses early on, and, in the summertime, I was one of those kids who colored in that wheel after you'd read all those books, very quickly. I spent time in the library, but I didn't really like history that much when I was a kid because I didn't see myself in the history books. But I'm really fortunate that I was coming of age during the Black Power movement and Black consciousness of the late 60s and early 70s, and I began to do research and find how we fit into the story. I'm also really fortunate that my grandfather had an amazing sense of history. So when he would talk about Reconstruction, he would talk about his grandfather who had been elected to the state legislature in Arkansas during Reconstruction, and all of the political opportunities for African Americans during that period of time. Of course, that was very different from the textbooks that I read in my overwhelmingly white high school, where Reconstruction was more like the original birth of a nation, which had Black people eating chicken bones and taking their shoes off in the South Carolina state legislature, which wasn't true, but that was a stereotype. And so I'm really lucky that I had that example of what the seeds planted for me of what our history was about. And then as I began to really research Madam Walker's life, I discovered that, no, it wasn't just about hair. It was about how she was positioned in her peer group with people like Booker T. Washington and Ida B. Wells Barnett, Mary McLeod Bethune, W.E.B. Du Bois, and to see what that generation did to make a difference so that we would have advanced. And then also to see what we need to be doing, especially in this season, this political season that is so very challenging for us. Mm-hmm. Now, I will just add to that about my nerdness, that I am a person who loves being in a historical society and going through papers that are 100 or 150 years old and smelling that mildew and mold on the papers, or I can be online at 3 a.m. with all these wonderful historical databases, all these newspaper databases and original documents, and I'm in heaven when I'm doing something like that.
Does that tie into your journal? You're kind of a journal nerd as well, journalism nerd.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely a news junkie. I mean, that's from all the, all the current events that I'm as interested in current events as I am in history. And I view, for instance, I'm viewing this election very much through a historical lens. And I'm also thinking, what people will be thinking about what we're going through now 100 years from now, because I'm always looking 100 years back or 200 years back, and I'm thinking, I hope that our great-great-great-great-grandchildren will look back favorably on us and know that we try to do the right thing.
So going into you being a history and a journalism nerd, a lot of that must come from your ties with Columbia University. You not only graduated from the School of Journalism, but you've also been a trustee. And so what inspires you to actively give back to Columbia?
Well, both Columbia and Harvard, where I went to undergraduate school, I feel a real connection to those communities and to, making sure that I'm looking out for the next generation just as other people did for me. So I really became involved with alumni activities first at Harvard and at Radcliffe. I was president of the Radcliffe Alumni Association and secretary of my class. And that involvement, I had never missed a reunion. Every 5 years I go back because I like being connected to the educational communities, to being current, to seeing what's going on with students now. It was very interesting to me yesterday to read that Harvard had suspended one of the male athletic teams because they had been creating lists about women and their physical assets, so to speak. So I like knowing what's going on in educational communities. Because of my involvement with Harvard and Radcliffe and alumni activities, as Columbia was really with the new president when Lee Bollinger came in, trying to sort of beef up its relationships with alumni communities, they kind of recruited me to be involved as a trustee. So that's been really interesting. I'm now in my 8th or 9th year as a trustee, and it's been great to see how these schools are different from each other, how their structures, their governance structures are different, but also to be able to connect to a community of students both at the journalism school and to be involved there, and then to see how a university is developing and reinventing itself. At Columbia, there's 2 new buildings just opened on the Manhattanville campus at 125th Street, so about 9 blocks north of the main campus, and looking at what the school is becoming as it, sees itself in the 22nd century, not just the 21st century. So I like that connection with education, with intellectual rigor, and with just knowing how young people are, going to be leading us.
No, absolutely. And speaking of young people leading, beyond being a hair product guru, Madam C.J. Walker was also a businesswoman and entrepreneur, obviously. Nowadays, especially in 2016, with the highest growing group of entrepreneurs being women of color, specifically black women in some studies, do you see Walker's influence in today's generation on businesswomen?
Definitely. I mean, that's part of what is so meaningful to me, that she can still inspire people. There's an organization called Walker's Legacy that was founded by a really wonderful young woman named Natalie Cofield, and that she puts together events with young women who are entrepreneurs, young women who are in tech. She just hosted something at the Google office in D.C. during Black Caucus Weekend, and there are 20 chapters around the country, also now some college campus chapters and a couple of international chapters. But they really look at Madam Walker as inspiration. They're taking it to the next level. They're doing their 21st century thing, but I'm delighted to be a part of that effort.
No, absolutely. And we were so happy to talk to you about that. As someone who, I went to an Ivy myself, so I went to Penn. So hearing what you're talking about regarding Harvard and Columbia and the new wave of students, the new wave of entrepreneurs, I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, and no matter where you go to school, there's always an organization that you can become involved with. There's an alumni, you can be involved with alumni. And I think I always tell young people, you pick a college, and whatever college it doesn't matter, or whatever education you pursue, and you'll be there for 4 years, hopefully, if you graduate on time, 5 if you need a little longer. But it's really the community of alumni that is like your lifelong connection, and people should reach out to those folks. And there's always somebody who's happy to see a younger person following their footsteps, or to give advice, or to give some encouragement. So I really encourage people, regardless of where you're going to school, to really seek out that alumni community.
I have just one last question to ask you with respect to the election that's coming up this Tuesday. What advice, what kernels of truth can you provide our listeners that are kind of apathetic to going out there on Tuesday and not really feeling favorability towards either candidate? What kind of advice would you give to them that, why they should go out there and hit the polls on Tuesday?
Well, I really wish that there were more civics classes going on, because we need to see, I think it's helpful to see this in a holistic, larger, bigger picture. It's not just about the vote, though people need to vote. I hope they will vote. Vote for president, vote for judges, vote for school board, vote for prosecutors, vote for every single thing on the ballot. Educate yourself about the ballot, because it's not just what's at the top of the ticket. The change really happens all the way down the ticket, and we need to understand that. Part of the reason that President Obama was not able to get more of his initiatives through is that a lot of us stayed home in 2010, and that allowed the Republicans to take over the state legislatures in many states. It allowed the Tea Party to get a wedge in and to create the confusion that they had created, which then allowed Trump to rise. And so it's not just about you feeling, someone feeling like I'm just not that inspired, or I'm just not that into this particular person. It's about the overall system and how we make a difference. Stuff does not happen overnight. No, one person can't do something as the President of the United States, but each of us collectively have to make our voices heard. And I just, think, I know some people say, we don't want to hear that people died, for us to vote, and that's, the old people talk about that kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that we all have to carry our weight, and it's for the future generations. It's not just about how we're feeling today. It's what we're trying to do for our children and our grandchildren.
I probably would just add, it's true that people died for us to vote. I think history is extremely important. I am also a history nerd, so I definitely think we need to know our history and also maintain it and live up to be the wildest dreams and hopes of those that came before us.
Right. In fact, I need to do this now. Every time it's time to vote, I put that picture of those children in Birmingham being hosed down, and this is why I vote, and this is why I vote.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Bundles,
you.
so much for taking the time to chat with us. And please let us know more about your work and where we can find you on social media.
All right. Well, I'm glad that the hashtag FLOTUS Flock helped us find each other.
Yes.
You are great. I'm so glad to be introduced to you.
Can you let us know where we can find more about the current work that you're doing and where we can find you on social media?
Absolutely. So I am at Alelia Bundles, ALELIABUNDLES on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Alelia Bundles, and it's A''Lelia Bundles. And my website is aleliabundles.com. And the other two websites, because we all have to have many hats, is madamcjwalker.com, madam with no E. And the hair care products are at mcjwbeautyculture.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was a really great discussion. We really appreciate you coming on and joining us.
Very much so.
My pleasure. Just delighted to meet you guys.
Hailing from East End of London, Kyla Frye is a multifaceted actress who has had nationwide and international campaigns for brands such as Sleek Cosmetics and 3 Mobile, and has also appeared on London Fashion Week. Never settling for less, Kyla is a remarkable talent whose intent on shaping the future of film and television across the globe remains steadfast through the launch of her production company, Friday Entertainment Ltd., and filmmaking debut of The Key, seen by over 22,000 people on the Community Channel and Vox Africa. In spring of 2014, Kyla appeared in the Hollywood blockbuster Edge of Tomorrow, starring Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. She's currently starring in the series The Few as a superheroine with BGN podcast alum Sam Benjamin.
Hi, welcome to this very special episode of the Black Girl Nerds podcast. Today I have actress Kyla Frye all the way from London in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thanks. We are so excited. So let's just dive right in. So you have been an actress for a while, and I wanted to know, how important do you think it is to see women of color in lead roles, and not just in a romantic context, but in television and film?
Well, I think it's important, full stop, to see ourselves reflected in our media, in our entertainment, namely because we imitate life and art imitates life as well. And when we think about what I call the 24 effect, we had a black president long before Obama was president, and so sooner or later we have our life imitating our art. And so I think it's important for us to see all forms, all diverse characters, personalities, careers, interests, and so on, reflected, so that we can all feel that we are a part of the society that we live in.
Oh, that's so true. Because I think a lot of times, and in TV and film, people tend to have the same types of profession. Like, I love, obviously, like, I'm a huge fan of The Flash and kind of everything that the CW is doing. I love it that they're doing, in the superhero universe. But I feel like everyone's a journalist. And I'm like, why don't, either they're a journalist or a cop.
That's your spot, girl. That's your spot.
Yeah, they're a journalist or they're a cop. And I'm like, well, we need people to be able to do a little bit more. Barry's the CSI, but...
Of course, there is that.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah, and so I'm like, there's a plethora of other professions that we really could fold into that would be amazing to see kind of in this universe.
And I think that's why even Taraji's new film that's coming up...
Yes.
With her and NASA and the story that's telling.
Yes.
I think that's why it's showing us how we were involved in the space race, we were involved in world wars, we were instrumental, in fact. So I think it's so important to recognize our history, to recognize where we've come from, the greatness and the achievements that we've already made, so that we can continue to kind of build on that and grow and be inspired and do better by them.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I absolutely, I heard that they got that film pushed up release date wise. And so I'm so excited because now it comes out here on Christmas, and it's just going to be, Taraji's new film, it's going to be so good. And I'm excited to hear more about their story.
It's going to be amazing.
Yes. So, currently, just how do you use your voice in the UK to kind of change and increase diversity within this industry?
Well, I work with an organisation called Black Youth Achievements. I started work with them back in 2011. They awarded me the Contribution to the Arts award in that year, and then I joined them as an ambassador in 2012. I followed that up with joining the British Urban Film Festival board as a patron just last year. And so I feel that it's important, not just as an actor, to be involved in be a person in the community, but it's important as a filmmaker, it's important as a storyteller, so that we can be inclusive in our storytelling, and that we can hear voices and stories from all over the world, from all different backgrounds, from all whether it be a council estate or whether it be a mansion. I think all stories are valid because we've all got a place here and we've all got a story to tell. So it's important to work with these sort of organisations who have the connections, who have the contacts to make a difference difference, whether that's government legislation, whether that's just getting new initiatives with the broadcasting companies and cable networks and so on. I think that's the way to do it, really, not just on the inside and just being a pretty face on the screen, but actively taking a hand as a producer, as a filmmaker, as a patron for those sort of organizations.
Yeah, that's so true. And giving back always is important because, you know, being able to share your story and how you've gotten to where you are with the youth really inspire them to want to do more, whether it's in acting or another industry. It just inspires them and they know that they can actually take certain leaps of faith, right? And they can actually, you know, push forward through adversity and do whatever it is that they want to achieve, you know, while here on Earth. So that's really, really awesome. So, just personally, because, you know, you are an actress and so much more, but what has been your favorite project that you've worked on thus far in your career?
Oh gosh, there's been so many amazing projects, to be honest with you. I think I'm fortunate to have worked with some amazing people and just amazing stories. I feel that I think it's my most recent projects that I really feel like I'm getting my teeth stuck into, and I really feel like I'm growing and progressing. And I think it's the work I've done with Sam Benjamin, who I believe you've spoken to previously. It's the crime caper film that I did called Double Cross, where I played artist Jen, who you know, gets in a little bit of trouble, and we kind of see how that plays out with his character George. And it's the fact that we were able to kind of just take ownership of our roles. And I think more often than not here in the UK, it's even more of a struggle to even get us to play the detective or even to play the journalist. We don't have the diversity in terms of our programming here in the same way that it is in the States. So myself and Sam, we had conversations about the characters that we wanted to play. And the things that we wanted to achieve within the industry, and lo and behold, Double Cross was the film that made it, and it was just such an awesome production. We worked with Sam Bradford and the Praxima crew, who I'm also working with on The Few, which is a superhero project, which I am, dare I say, super excited about. Because I'm actually playing a superhero, and you know, although we know the black superheroes exist, we're only now getting to see them. And for me to be British born, I've got family from the Caribbean and Ireland, and I'm mixed heritage, but born and bred in London, and to be able to play a British born Londoner superhero, you know, a woman of colour, love, you know, it doesn't happen every day, but that's the thing. We need to make it happen every day. We need to make it a reality, even if it is our science fiction reality, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And so, you know, I was talking to Sam about The Few, but also just about Double Cross. I loved it, actually, because I watched it and I wanted to see more. So you guys definitely have to make it like a full-length feature.
We definitely are. We've got the feature in the works. We'll be back to talk to you all about it, love.
Yes,
don't worry. Exclusive.
Yes. I mean, I would absolutely love that because it was so good. But then I was like, no, it can't be over. And so, yeah, and just talking to Sam about The Few and the progress of The Few and how it's going. I mean, it definitely sounds incredible. So, you know, we would love to talk to you guys again once it actually, you know, is released. That would be incredible once it's all said and done. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's making these strides, right? And really connecting with other artists who believe in the same things and want to put out similar kind of material and really want to see more diversity and women in like lead roles and in good quality roles, you know? So that's incredible.
I think it's about a case of art imitating life and so on. When we step outside our front doors, we see people, especially in New York, whether it's London, we find people from all over the world. There's 7.2 billion people on this planet, and we are just so fortunate enough to be in these big cities that allow everybody to feel comfortable enough to share in our lifestyle, to share in their lifestyles and their cultures and in their traditions. And I think that's what makes the world richer. I think that's what makes our communities richer, our storytelling richer. And so it's definitely about working with people who see that, who recognize that, who appreciate that, and who celebrate that. Because at the end of the day, as we say, it's only one race. And I think that we should celebrate each and every one of our stories.
Speaking of which, so, kind of what has been the most impactful or influential kind of body of work for you that really influenced you as a woman and as an artist? Just talking about how we should really appreciate other people's cultures and we really want to see that on screen. What did you see for the first time or second time or third time that really kind of influenced you just as a woman and an artist?
When we talk about body of work, I mean, I'm always, it's like being here from the UK, I'm always admiring the works of Marianne Jean-Baptiste and Tandy Newton and Sophie Okonedo and Naomi Harris and even we have Gugu and Bethar Raw and Ashley Madekwe. We've got loads of beautiful, talented, strong, empowered and amazing women doing amazing things over in the States. But the problem is it's not being heralded as much here in the UK, and I think that's part of the problem. But I think that even stems back as far as even Josephine Baker, who is my absolute number one idol. I love her to pieces, but even she, being American born, wasn't even accepted in the States. She had to find her career over in Paris, over in Europe, where they weren't so black and white about things. You know what I mean? And I feel that she was able to set an example for not only what it meant to be as an artist, but also what it meant to be as a human being. She did so much in World War II as a covert spy, hiding war secrets in her sheet music, and she was able to have what she calls her rainbow tribe, which is 12 children from all over the world. Before Angelina Jolie tried to do anything of this, right? You had Josephine Baker just trying to prove a point that we are all one and the same, and that we're all able to come as one and just celebrate the differences and herald those differences and know that we are still the same because of those differences. And yeah, I think she was just an icon, both singer, both artistic muse for Paul Collin, and an actress and activist. And she was asked to take up the mantle after Martin Luther King Jr. passed by curator herself, because she felt that she was that important. No, I'm no word of a lie, love. I done my research. I am a black girl nerd, you see? So yeah, she's an absolute icon, an absolute legend. And if I was able to even cross the boundaries or even push them even further in the way that she has allowed us and so many other artists, whether they be singers, whether they be actresses, filmmakers or whatever, or journalists even, I feel that I'll be doing my little piece for the world,
Yeah. And so, it's actually really interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people don't know that Josephine Baker really was doing a lot during the war. No one really, a lot of people don't read up on the fact that she used her art to hide certain secrets. So, I mean, that is something that a lot of people don't know. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. But I mean, she was an incredible force to be reckoned with. Absolutely. That, I feel like a lot of people don't really know the depth of that. They have yet to really understand the depths of that for sure. So actually that kind of segues into, maybe it's Josephine Baker, I'm not sure, but what story do you want to see told that you feel hasn't been told yet?
See, there are so many, aren't there? There are so many, and I feel like the journey that my grandparents had made over to the UK. 3 of my 4 grandparents are from a small island in the Caribbean called Montserrat.
Oh wow!
And that's an island that happens to have a volcano on it called Mount Sophia. It's still held as a British colony. My nan, who's the absolute diamond in the crown of family amazingness. She's from Ireland, Dublin in Ireland. And so they both came over to the UK, residing in East London, Stoke Newington, Hackney area in the 60s. And they've been together for 60 years. Now, this is a mixed couple here. It was no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. Posters everywhere, all around the city streets of London. Right. And they had to endure so much, not just from outside of their families, but inside their families as well, telling them that their love wasn't right, that it wasn't real, that it wasn't supposed to be. And here I am. Here I am as a product of that. My grandparents were fortunate enough to have 2 beautiful daughters who happened to be my mother and my auntie, who then went on to have 6 grandchildren, my grandparents, and 2 great grandchildren. the legacy that they've left, because they knew that their love was true. They knew that the world may not agree with what is true, but it's not for the world to dictate how we must live our lives, you know?
Right.
And so I think that seeing that how that's influenced even British culture, British history, and the stories of mixed race individuals and mixed ancestry, and how that just proves so much that we are all one and the same, and that we all share each other's blood, and that we all should just appreciate what one has to offer.
Right. Oh my goodness. Well, it's a true testament. I mean, you know, all of our families have had to overcome some sort of adversity, but the fact that, you know, your grandparents were able to stay kind of committed to each other and to their family and to their values, even in the midst of adversity, you know, definitely says a lot. So I know that you have probably taken away a lot of qualities from your grandparents, and even your parents. So, you know, what did they tell you or teach you that influenced kind of how you use your voice or platform to help start and push conversations about social injustice? Because I'm sure your grandparents really, you know, they not only kind of went through racial injustice, but probably a lot of social injustice and a lot of different things in London when they first got there. So, you know, how do you use your voice to really help start these conversations and kind of find solutions or resolution, or even really just informing people who are really not informed about certain issues that are going on?
I think it's just a case of just being honest with ourselves, being honest with each other. I mean, we can't argue with the truth. You know, I'm a product of those relationships.
Right. How do you use kind of your voice and platform to help start in conversations, you know, about social injustice?
Well, the thing is, I started my production company, Friday Entertainment, back in 2012.
Oh, wow.
The first production I created was a documentary called The Key, and it was a documentary that looked into what it takes to make it within the entertainment industry. Now, the idea was just that I would speak to people whom I'd worked with. So I interviewed people like Jimmy Ekambola, who played Baron Reiter in Arrow, and Amel Amin, who played the young Forrest Whitaker in The Butler, and it was also in Maze Runner. And various other amazing individuals. But when it came to trying to get it broadcast, which I did eventually, which was successful with certain networks, but they happened to obviously be black networks. One of the questions that I was asked during a panel discussion about my piece was, did you realize that, you know, you only spoke to black people? And it was just so bizarre, because I had never looked at it like that. I had just looked at it as, well, I'm interviewing people whom I've worked with. Now, I've done a lot of independent work, and it just so happened that these independents also were of color. It just so happens that it was these individuals that decided to respond to my email and get involved in a project that was self-funded, and that was wanting to educate and inspire other creators that were coming up. So no, I didn't realize that. But the real question is, why weren't there enough Caucasian people willing to get involved or willing to work with someone like myself, for example?
Right.
And then when we did, we had the premiere at the British Urban Film Festival in 2013 at Channel 4. And one of the first things I asked the audience was, how many people here, you know, have a British passport or feel, you know, that they would call themselves British? And everyone put their hands up. I followed that question up with, and now how many of you feel that you see yourselves reflected on British TV and media? And they all put their hands down.
Wow.
And I think that speaks for itself. You know, it's not about, you know, necessarily using my actual voice, as it's allowing my work to speak for me, my work to speak on my behalf. And as long as I aim to create stories or pieces of work that is honest, that is truthful, that is reflective of my truth as I know, as I see it through the lens of someone who's born and bred in East London here, then that's all that I can do, and hope that in some way that it will be an insight for those who have lived outside of my own bubble, or whether it's a tool to inspire and motivate others who may not have seen or known it to be possible to do anything like this. You know, it's not every day that you get someone who's writing, directing, producing and starring in their own piece just because, you know, they're not getting the calls or the auditions or the roles that they would like, or they feel is reflective of their own truth. So, you know, you just got to get out there and do it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so that's very true. You know, I've heard a lot of people in the industry, a lot of women of color especially, say that because the roles were not readily available, or because the roles were not being given to them, that they had to step out. You have to step out and start to create your own material to kind of create your own path, because you're not being allowed that opportunity to really show your range as an artist. And since, you know, those opportunities weren't readily available, I mean, I see a lot of changes now, right? In 2014, 15 and 16.
Absolutely.
But, you know, before then it was really, really challenging. And so I know a lot of people who said that. So I think it's really commendable that you have been able to write your own material, produce your own material,
Thank you so
direct
much.
your own material.
Thank you.
It's amazing. And so, you know, it is something that like you have to do, because if you want to be an artist and you want to have longevity in this industry and you're not being allowed or afforded those opportunities to do so, then create your own path. So, you know, you talked a little bit already kind of about a couple of the new projects that you're working on. So anything else that you're really excited about?
Definitely. I mean, we're not the only ones. We've got Angelina Jolie and Jodie Foster trying to do the same thing at the moment. So I think it's for women in general right now. We're really trying to just kind of grow.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. So what is it that you tune into or listen to regularly? Like, what are some of your favorite shows right now?
Well, you know, I finished obviously, you know, the Luke Cage. I was getting, like, I finished that. I'm episode 10 of Daredevil. I had to go backwards because after I watched Luke Cage, I was like, no. I need some questions answered. So I had to go back and start Daredevil now. So I'm like episode 10 of season 2 now. But right now I'm loving it. I really am. I was like, I'm getting all these Misty Knight comparisons coming through the door. So I was like, those casting directors need to holler at this London sister. She's right here, you know. Misty's got one. But yeah, I'm loving that. I am a bit of a superhero geek. I can't lie. I really can't. I just think that it's the idea that any one of us could be super if we believe in ourselves enough, if we appreciate our different qualities enough, if we appreciate our different abilities and not try to be anyone else or compare ourselves to anyone else. I think we can all be super in our own right. So when you see the kind of the battles between good and evil, and when you see the kind of the inner animosity and the dilemmas that these heroes face each and every time, I find it quite inspiring, if not just entertaining. So yeah, bring on more of that.
Right. That is so awesome. So just tell everybody kind of what's a hobby that you have that people would be really surprised to know.
Well, I think I outed myself on my Instagram the other day. I was saying about how much of a geek I am, but I have a thing about reading plaques around the city.
Oh, wow. Really?
It's you know, like when they have this famous old dead person lived here once and they once did something amazing for the country.
That's really interesting. I would have never guessed.
Yes, reading plaques. Reading plaques around the city. I have like this brain that just soaks up information. But like I love history. I love like knowing where we came from, even if it's random bits. I really have just got like a thirst for knowledge of all sorts, of all kinds. And you know, when you watch like just nature documentaries, and I watched Cosmos, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, his with I think Seth MacFarlane produced it or whatnot, but that was one of the most remarkable documentaries I had ever seen in my entire life. And that was obviously all about the cosmos itself, the planets, the stars, our place here, how do we get here. I love learning about everything and anything, and I follow lots of different kind of random things on Twitter that just kind of, you know, tweet random facts each day just so, you know, you just keep up to date with random bits. So I always feel like if I was ever to go on a quiz show, I'd definitely win the jackpot. because I'm prepared for anything with my general knowledge head. But yeah, that's it really. I just have a kind of a random thirst for knowledge. And I kind of geek out on it.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so just kind of lastly, when it's all over and you really look back on your life and your career, what's the legacy that you want to leave?
I think that's always a tough one, because I think you only know the legacy you've left once you've actually lived the life you hope and aspire and work towards living. So I can only say what I aspire to live a life that's truthful, that's honest, that's full of love, that's full of compassion, that's full of willingness to understand and to connect with other people around the globe. I hope to create work that is representative, that is inclusive, that is representative of us all. I feel that we all have something valid to offer. And I feel that, as you rightly said earlier, not just our grandparents and our parents, but we are all as individuals have gone through so much. And sometimes I think we discount ourselves or do ourselves a disservice by saying, oh no, it's all right. There's a lot of people that have it a lot worse off than us. But sometimes, we have to take account for the things that we have done, the things that we have achieved, and the hurdles that we have overcome. And those stories, whether you believe you are a little hero in your own right or not, can inspire someone else somewhere else in the world. And like I said, 7.2 billion people on this earth and growing. And I think that, I'd love to hear from everyone. I just want to hear how, I think, as I said, we all have something to offer. And yeah, tales of adversity, tales of strength, tales of love, tales of disappointment, tales of courage, tales of life. Yeah, I hope I create work that is just that.
Well, that sounds incredible, and looking forward to, seeing more work from you.
Thank you.
So, if you would just please give your social media handles, give us social media shout outs, like where can people find you on the internet?
Yes, so you can Google me. So it's Kyla Frye, Kylafrye, for extra special, dare I say it. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm not on Snapchat. I don't snap. But yeah, you can catch me pretty much everywhere else, and catch my production company Friday, Frye Day Ent Ltd. That's on Insta, Facebook, and Twitter as well. And also I have a clothing line, I Love Love, because I do. And that's also available on your Facebook, Instas, and Twitter. So yeah, no Snap, but if you want me on Snap, then holler, innit?
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
No worries, my darling. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak to little old me over here. So.
No, thank you. And I know it's late there, so thank you.
No worries, darling. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye.
Our final segment is a panel over at New York Comic Con called Women of Color in Comics, Race, Gender, and the Comic Book Medium, moderated by Regine L. Sawyer, the founder and creator of Women in Comics Collective. Panelists feature Barbara Brandon Croft, Carol Burrell, Shay Grayson, Jules Rivera, and Camille Zhang. The panel discusses everything from women of color comic book characters and heroes to characters with disabilities.
So we're going to get started. First and foremost, my name is Regine L. Sawyer. I am the owner, writer, creator of Lock It Down Productions. I produce several comic books, The Rippers, I Switch, and Eating Vampires. I'm also the coordinator and founder of the Women in Comics Collective International. We have members across the world. Right now, currently, Barbara, yes, please. She made it! Yay! So we have upwards of 130 some odd members in various countries, including the United States. We do panel discussions, workshops, art shows. We have a convention in the Bronx called Women in Comics Con, aka WinkCon. We've been around for about 4.5 years. So how we're going to start is we're just going to go down the line. Ladies, I want you to each tell them about yourselves and what brought you to comic. I'm going to start with you, Carol Burrell. Yes.
My name is Carol Burrell, also write and draw under Clio, and I have an online webcomic, but I'm also have been an editor in children's books and comics for quite some time, exclusively in comics for about the past 10 years, working with Lerner Publishing, Houghton Mifflin, First Second Books, Paper Cuts, and various other places. Right now I'm a freelancer for First Second Books.
Hi, my name is Che Grayson. I am a filmmaker and a comic writer. I've published 2 indie comics called Origamo and Scatterbrains, and I'm currently at TED, as in TED Talks, working on my first feature film.
That's rad. Alright, yo, what's up, New York? It's nice to be back. I stuffed an entire pound of cough drops down my throat just to be here. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So my name is Jules Rivera. I am I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in the Bronx. I do comics. Right now I'm working with Paper Cuts, Mattel, to draw Barbie books. I just wrapped on Barbie Starlight Adventure, which was like the most dope assignment I've ever gotten. And I'm currently awaiting my new assignment, Barbie Video Game Hero. So that's going to be coming out hopefully by December. It's going to be a crunch. So also I self-publish my webcomic Valkyrie Squadron, and I recently signed my other comic, Misfortune I, with Action Live Entertainment, so I just have to get production rolling on that in the next month, and I'm a busy lady. I know how to fill up my free time.
Nice. Hi, my name is Micheline Hess. I'm the artist and writer behind Malice in Ovenland. I worked as a colorist at Milestone Comics. I've also done animation and some interactive gaming for Adult Swim and Nickelodeon. And right now, I'm just kind of trying to push Malice in Ovenland while trying to recover from Malice in Ovenland and get ready for the next round of Malice in Ovenland.
My name's Barbara Brandon Croft, and I am a newspaper cartoonist, so I kind of don't fit as well in this group, but...
Don't make me introduce you, Barbara.
All right. Anyway, I actually became the first Black woman to be nationally syndicated in the mainstream.
Thank you, Barbara.
My comic book was called Where I'm Coming From, and it ran in like 50 papers. Universal Press Syndicate was my syndicate. And I came to comics because of my dad, who was one of our pioneer Black cartoonists, who was also nationally syndicated in a strip called Luther, Los Angeles Times Syndicate, and that's my story.
Whole story, though.
So Barbara sort of kicked off the second half of that question. So I'm going to go back into it. What brought you ladies to comics?
For me, growing up as a kid, I used to go around the corner. We lived in Flatbush, and we would go and get, I would get like Wendy the Witch, and I think I got like Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, which is kind of weird considering. But there was never really any characters who looked like myself, and while I wasn't always quite fully conscious of it. It was something that just kind of nagged at me. I read a lot of comics with animals that talked and all kinds of creatures and things from outer space, but very few Black people. I found myself at a point only a handful of years ago not wanting to look back, on many years passing and feel like I hadn't tried to do something to kind of correct that. So that's kind of why I went into comics, and I wanted to tell stories that particularly appeal to young girls of color and try to give them a sense of feeling like they belong in these stories as well and that they can see themselves in these stories. So that's why I started doing that.
That's cool. Well, it's either this or engineering. Engineering didn't quite work out. Well, seriously, I really do have an engineering degree. I got into comics because when I was growing up, my favorite cartoons were X-Men and The Tick, okay? Holler! What's up? I'm hollering with what little strength I've got. Kidding, I'm Herculean. So I got into comics. I also got into manga later on because Sailor Moon was a thing that happened. And pretty much every woman in her late 20s, early 30s who got into comics could tell you that Sailor Moon wrecked their lives. So it made me want to kind of tell my own stories and, draw my own kind of characters and stuff. And similar to what she said, where, that's what she said, Similar to what I'm sure all of the other panelists are going to say is that, they wanted to see themselves represented in comics. And the reason why I started Valkyrie Squadron and Misfortune High is because I wanted to see stories that were kind of personal to me, and especially Valkyrie Squadron was supposed to be aimed at girls, because my sister would tell me, oh yeah, we tried taking Jocelyn's, my niece, to the comic store, but she didn't really find anything for herself. And I'm like, wait a minute, aren't I a comics artist? I'm gonna fix this. So that's what's up. I started doing girls comics, but then other people took notice about how good I do the girls comics, and then I got hired to do girls comics for other people. Yeah, it's really awesome.
For me, I was always into visual storytelling, so I started off as a photographer. And then I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker and went into, I go to film school at NYU, and had the opportunity to bring all of these. I was really into magical realism and fantasy, and had a lot of fun bringing, little black girls and young black women on the screen and creating characters from there. But making movies is really expensive. And so I said to myself, let me think about the comic book genre, and I pitched it to someone who's now my best friend, and we've been writing and illustrating dope, queer, gender non-conforming black girls for the past 4 years now. And definitely Octavia Butler was one of my big things where I was like, I need to see this more. She's my life, and that's what got me on this road.
Well, I think that I've been into comics since, I can't even say when, kind of my family had a tradition of reading lots of comics and sharing them and reading the Sunday comics and reading comic books. But when engineering didn't work out and then filmmaking didn't work out, seriously, I found that comics was a great way to have control of the entire story. And although in my webcomic, which is set in ancient Rome, SPQR Blues doesn't have, central figures are not, well, they're people of color. They're drawn in black and white, which surprised people when I colored them and they saw that their skins were darker than they expected, and queer characters that come out through the story. More as my career as an editor, I've had more opportunities to work with more women, work with more creators of color, and sort of change the sort of people you see on the covers of books, which was also a major problem in kids' books, where they just wouldn't represent people on the covers even if they were inside the books. So both in the actual finished product and the people I got to work with, I've been able to encourage that along the way.
Amazing, amazing. In an industry that is constantly changing, how do you think your work contributes to that change? I heard little sprinkles of it, but let's get into the meat. Go. Whoever jumps, or I'll call on you.
If you're putting sprinkles on your meat, you're doing it wrong. It doesn't go together.
Give me sprinkles of salt, pepper.
I guess, okay, that'd be better. Caraway, too.
Well, as the industry's changed, part of what I've been able to do is have more, I think, more willingness of the publishing companies to allow more representation. Just, there would be a time when I first started where you couldn't even do it. It wasn't even a possibility. Now you can just sort of do it and not have to apologize for it later. So that's been a positive step. Is that the question? I kind of lost it in the sprinkles.
No, you got go through half these sprinkles. Jay?
Well, I think visibility is really important. Just seeing different forms, and I just want to shout out to the Bitch Planet ladies in the front. I
was looking at that. I was like, that's so awesome.
I really feel like that comic series really not only showed black women, but black women of different shapes and sizes, which is lovely. And for me, I'm actually working on my first real gig through Image, and I pitched to them.
Congratulations on them, first and foremost.
And I pitched to them that I wanted to have 2 ballerinas, and one of them has a prosthetic leg.
I love that.
And it's like, no, the story's not going to be about her having a prosthetic leg. She is a ballerina with a prosthetic leg.
So
And
she's like the Furiosa of ballerinas. Oh my gosh.
And I think that really pushes just addressing how complex we are. We are not just black, we are women, we are not just black women, we are queer, whatever class we're from. And I think the industry is understanding that nuance in a way that they didn't before. And I think they're embracing it more as well. So I'm excited about that.
It's funny, someone brought up we do something and we don't have to apologize for it later. See, I always just did what I did. I never made any apologies. I was like, if I just threw this thing out, I just made my product. I'm like, I don't care if you don't like it. So, I don't know. I think that open act of defiance, people are starting to see folks like me and, you know, other folks just doing that. And they're like, hey, wait a minute, you're actually making waves and you're actually doing things that we've never seen before. And, you know, coming up with ideas that are kind of, you know, shaking stuff up. And that's pretty cool. Because the industry has gotten to a point, or at least had gotten to a point, probably like, I want to say 2011, 2012, or it was just stagnating. You just kept seeing the same stuff over and over again. So when you have people introducing new ideas, new infusions, new ways of approaching artwork and storytelling, that's when you see good changes. And that's when you start to see, you know, editors and stuff being more open to the idea of, okay, well, maybe we can be more inclusive and maybe we can add more diversity and not just have diversity on the page, but diversity behind the creators table. Because that's, I think, is where it counts the most, where you see the diversity. Because, yeah, I mean, okay, so I'm Puerto Rican. Hi. It's really great that somebody can write a story about a Puerto Rican woman, but you know what? I've been a Puerto Rican woman all my life. Maybe you should hire a Puerto Rican woman with a Puerto Rican woman life experience to tell the story of a Puerto Rican woman. And the same goes for Black women, Asian women, women of all the colors ever. Like, you know, maybe get us behind the table because we know what we're talking about. Just saying.
One of the first comics I did was one called the Anansi Kids Club and the All Saints Day Adventure, and it took place on an island in the Caribbean where my mom grew up, which is St. Vincent. And after I published that, it deals with 3 kids, and they're in a club, and they're dealing with what's called a sukuyon, which is like a vampire. That's one of the girls suspects that one of the women in their village is a sukuyon, so she's trying to get her friends to help her see if they can figure that out. And I was selling it at the Brooklyn Book Fair a couple of summers ago, and the parents would come through there, and the kids would be like, "Oh," and you know, the mothers would be, "Sukuyon, hey, Jack, come back, you have to see it," you know. And I was just like, "Wow, that's interesting," you know. So it was really insightful. Being at the Schaumburg Black Comics Fest last winter too was very enlightening because what people were so excitedly talking about, one of the things was Milestone 2.0 coming back, and I really didn't sink into me for a long time how many people were hurt actually and really missed Milestone when they were first there. Being that I was a colorist there, my head was kind of in the clouds because I thought I had made it, TM. So, you know, I was like, I'm going to color Icon, you know. But yeah, people were actually really affected by those stories and those characters, and very real characters, very approachable characters, diverse characters with great stories and wonderful art. So I'm really glad to be actively a part of that.
And I'll throw in my old head. I'm the old one on here, but when I started out, there were no Black women characters in the newspapers. My strip was all women, and it was all Black women, and it was a void that had been in the papers forever, you know. So it made a change. And I know we're talking about the changings in the industry, and I'm so happy to see so many more people cartooning, so many women of color cartooning. But as much as things have changed, things have stayed the same. What my strip was about social commentary. So we talked about, I'm talking about my ladies in my comic strip, but I talked about, you know, social issues, race issues, things like that. And as it turns out, my father, who was a cartoonist 20, 30 years before me, talked about the same issues. And not only that, I can show some of my strips that I did previously, and they are so on point at this moment in time. So it's interesting how things change, yes, but many things stay the same, and we still have to deal with the same issues, and that's my input.
Okay. Now, according to various popular comic book websites, young women are the fastest growing demographic in comic book readership. However, the amount of women working as creators, particularly those of color, has recently been called into question. Now, how prevalent are women of color working in the industry?
I've always thought for a while I was kind of the only one.
Did you?
Yeah, like until Women's Comics International picked me up, I was like, well, I guess I'm the only Latina on the Western Seaboard doing this. Whatever, all right, cool.
The fact that we can probably sit here and count them all is probably a bad sign. It's not good.
But it's also not true.
You don't think that we could sit here and, well, given enough time, how much time do you have? I think a lot of women are sort of coming up through the ranks, but in terms of, you mean professional work and...
Professional, mainstream.
Mainstream. I think that, well, there certainly has been a case recently, and even internationally, people sort of looking and saying, well, there are no women of color, there's nobody, and they come up with a list of like 500 men, ignoring the 350 women, but...
I know research is hard. You should have to type it into Google and expect results, so yeah, it's
well,
hard.
maybe part of it is that we're not getting the prominence and the names aren't out there, so that immediately when you go down through your local comic book shop and look down the shelves, you're not seeing, Smith, Broadnax, and Martinez are all women, but you don't know it, and that could be part of the invisibility, and people are just taking it for granted that those are all a bunch of men.
I know someone was working on creating a creators of color database that we were all you could submit your name and your criteria to them, and it was, last I checked it actually kind of katamari'd into this giant ball of creators, and it was actually, people were like, wow, like they're, I mean, true,
and
like,
it's
I don't
also
know.
the Orme Society. Orme Society has a full listing of all the black women that are in the comic book industry, and you can and it's continuously building because women are continuously adding their names to it.
I think the point is that, like, join our team. Make yourself heard. Just come up to one of us and say, hey, I do comics too. And, you know, if you want to get into it, just come up to us and say, how do I get started? And I'm like, draw some pictures on a page and have people saying stuff. I don't know, just do it. We can always use more. That's the point.
I mean, to an extent, there aren't many people who are promoting us. And so promotion is extremely important. So you can exist, but where's your voice? And I think social media has really helped because once Riri came out and everyone was like, an all-white team again? Like, enough is enough. And they were like, but there are no black women writers or artists. And then social media, like Twitter literally blew up and all of us were tagged. And it was like, oh, okay. And then a week later, Roxane Gay was hired as the first black woman to ever work for Marvel. Marvel is older than like all of us combined. Not really. But it's been a long time.
I love
coming. So yeah, I think we need that promotion, and that's what's so lovely about like Black Comics Month or Regine with Women in Comics. Like, that's extremely important, us having the community and the promotion behind our work.
And then Roxane is the first black female writer rather than artist.
Writer, correct. Writer.
Well, she's one of them. Nyla Magruder actually wrote a story for, I believe, Groot and Rocket. Yeah, it came out in July. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boom, there you go.
So let's stay on topic. Whose work are you enjoying that happens to be written or made by a woman of color? Maybe give the audience some names if they're looking for any. You can name yourself.
I recently started having this kind of love-hate affair, I'd say for the past year, with Korean dramas. I love them, and I hate them, and then I love them again. So one of the other things is because
I love Korean dramas.
My old job used to be sitting there near Koreatown, so I would be going down to this one place called Woody Chip that had a lot of like traditional cooking. So when I saw Robin Ha's Cook Korean comic, I was just like, and everybody in the store was like, and I picked it up. And it's great because it has tons of story and recipes told in a kind of a narrative style. Very colorful, very easy to read and understand. And with the proliferation of H-Marts, thank God, in the city, it's easy to get a lot of the ingredients and stuff too that they're listing in the recipes themselves. So it's a great way to get exposure to the culture and the food of Korea and just read some really cute stories and learn some new recipes too.
Can we take a moment to talk about everything Spike Trotman has done with Iron Circus Comics?
Yes.
Because, oh my God! So this is a black woman. She's based out of Chicago, and she has been a publisher for how many years now?
Maybe it's about 5.
About
like
5
since
years.
Kickstarter started.
Since Kickstarter started, every time this girl drops a book, her Kickstarter rakes in at least 100 thou. furiously. She's really, really talented, and she's exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about bringing in diversity and a new spice and a new flavor to comics. Her anthologies include Smut Peddler and Sleep of Reason. If you're into horror, I mean, there's just a lot of really great stuff. And she did, she also did Templar. That was Templar.
Yeah, Templar was first, right?
Yeah, right. So like this woman is like a ridiculous font of talent, and I don't think we're saying enough about her. So there, Spike Trotman, look up her stuff.
She goes by Iron Spike on Twitter, right?
Yes. At Iron Spike on Twitter. Yes.
I like everything that Sana Amanat brings in at Marvel, and I think Miss Marvel is one of the most just like beautifully written, just one of the most beautifully conceived stories in comics, in my opinion. And I think having a Muslim woman as the voice of this comic about a Muslim girl from New Jersey is kind of the cream of the crop. It's what we should aspire to. And so I like what she's doing, and I think she plans to do more of it. So I think anything Sana Amanat as the editor is one of the big editors at Marvel, so anything from her should read.
Nice. Cool.
Everything they said is wonderful, especially so I was going to use Spike, and now I can't, so I don't have anybody.
Well, there's also the works of Amy Chu. There. Amy Chu. She wrote Poison Ivy.
I think your brain is just leaving. You know so many women of color.
Well, I know. Are you kidding
I was
going to say Aletha, but
Yes,
Aletha
Martinez. Who was supposed to be here today, but she's working on World of Wakanda, and she has a tight deadline, and she was crying to me that she can't come today, but she wishes she was with you.
So she is the artist, one of the artists on that book, on the Black Panther spinoff that is coming out soon, which is already solicited. The first one's supposed to be out this month, I think.
November.
Mm-hmm. Then she's been in comics for, 20 years, and very unheralded, and I hope now gives her more heralding, so I think she would be my top artist in terms of just her flexibility, but and Spike.
And Spike, but I beat you to it.
Yes.
And the woman behind Monstrous?
Yes.
Marjorie Liu.
Marjorie
Liu. But every time I see her table's super mobbed, so you gotta work on your elbow game, yo.
She has another panel right under this one.
Right under this one. So,
I'll stay.
It's gonna get real.
Is there a difference between diversity and representation?
Yes,
absolutely.
The one leads to the other, or the one is the reason for the other. Representation is what happens when you consider diversity, or diversity happens because you need representation.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of representation as a trend where a lot of artists who maybe your stereotypical white male hipster Brooklyn artist who want to have more representation of other people in their books, and they're trying very hard, but without the diversity behind it, and the creators and the editors and everyone else involved all the way through the chain to the readers, maybe you're not getting that authentic voice like the two of you are speaking of, with a Muslim editor, with your own stories about, your own culture, whether it's from the islands or from Puerto Rico or from the Bronx.
Puerto Rico.
I'm old enough to remember that old commercial, "Welcome, fellow Americans to Puerto Rico."
Oh, God.
So, yeah, I think there's a difference, but both of them can walk hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just going to add that it's I throw it in every once in a while, but I think that diversity and representation, of course, they're cut from the same cloth. But I guess my interpretation is when I think about diversity, I think about the root, it's like diverse, and that's like the adjective. So that's describing what we're doing. And when you think about representation, I think about represent, which is really the verb. It's like you're doing something. You're making a point to represent. So, you need them both. You need the diversity, which can be, adding black characters, having black hands draw these characters. But when you come and you represent, you are coming with a point, and you are making a point about what needs to be out there, and it's basically our experiences, and that we are part of this whole world, and we are to be heard and understood.
For me, I actually don't even know if I truly know what diversity means to me anymore, if that makes sense.
Okay.
The word just creates a fog in my head and I can't respond. It just doesn't actually mean anything to me anymore. But for some reason, like the word visibility has been really lately like on the tip of my tongue, because I realize when you see things, that's when the agitation and the change actually comes. You know, I can be a black woman, but when I'm a black woman with a fro, I'm a black woman. Or Beyonce could be a black woman, but when she's a black woman and she's performing at the Super Bowl and putting her fist up, that's what I mean about visibility. It's seeing things that you never have seen before, to the extent that like the fabric of your mind is just being layered. Kind of diversity seems so vague now. But when I think about visibility, I think about just the specifics that make us who we are, and that's why I like all of the stuff that's coming up, and that's why I particularly like self-published comics and indie comics.
Yeah.
I feel like it addresses that.
Diversity is about adding more flavors, you know, instead of, in comics we've seen one flavor and that was cool for a while, and it was in spandex for a while, and that was also cool, I guess, but now we're starting to see more flavors and people can appreciate more flavors, and that's what's so good about it. We need that diversity, because when we see all those new flavors and when we see ourselves in these things, it makes us feel good about ourselves. It makes our society better because it makes other people able to empathize with us and see us as humans. I'm a human.
Speaking about visibility, somewhere under my underground shirt is my feeble attempt at a Z Nation costume for Z Nation. Yes, thank you. And all Roberta Warren, and there needs to be a Z Nation comic. I'm just saying. That's a sort of a spoofy zombie show, and it's for visibility. It started out with a white male hero, and he had a black female sidekick, and spoiler, he was no longer in the picture after a few episodes, and the internet kind of went, well, who's going to be the leader now? They're going to have to find, maybe this white guy from episode 8 will be the leader, or how about this guy, and maybe the young kid they just picked up, and it didn't seem to occur to much of the audience that she was going to step into the role of the leader, which then she did for 2 more seasons. So that visibility, I think, starts to normalize the idea that our heroes don't all have to look the same, and comics, like television and film, hit you with a visual rather than, you know, a more abstract idea. Z Nation.
Is it important that marginalized people see representations of themselves in media? Does it matter?
Yes.
Yes, it does. This room would be empty if it didn't matter.
Absolutely. You know, when I was growing up, everything was newspapers, news comics in the newspapers. It was all animals or white folks, and that was just normal. You know, it's like, and it wasn't until we started seeing black characters and you know, that you're like, oh, there's a black person in there. It's not. It's the fact that we were missing is what made us feel like we were not normal, and so it makes such a difference for us to be able to see ourselves. You know, if what's normal. Sorry, my chocolate bar. If
a challenger appears.
This is Camilla Zhang. Well, introduce her officially in a second. There was a kitten on the tracks. There was a kitten on the train.
It's actually real. There was a kitten on the tracks, and the conductor. I thought the conducter was messing with us. He made like these like little cat noises with his, I don't know, maybe his phone. But really, if you look on the MTA website, I have screen capped it. It's evidence. Wow. There was a kitten on the train. Wow. That's why I'm late. Only in New York.
That's wild.
Yeah. My only other point is that if you don't see yourself and everything starts normal and everything that's normal is white, then you really feel abnormal, and it makes you feel lesser. And not only do we start to believe it as people, other people believe it as well, and it just creates such a crazy world. I mean, when I was growing up, there was, you know, if there was going to be somebody black on TV, even. There was like a page in Jet Magazine. This week, you can look for this, and this. And it was like, it was a big thing to celebrate, you know. It's very different now. We are more visible now. But if we're not there, we have a history of feeling not normal and not part of the mainstream. So, indeed, it is important.
representation is a lot like oxygen. You take it for granted unless you're not actually getting any.
Yeah.
That's true.
But, I think it's important to see yourself because it inspires you to do better and become more. Like, how many times have you seen this where somebody says, I saw so-and-so do the thing on TV and it made me want to do the thing? Like, Whoopi Goldberg talks about how she saw Nichelle Nichols on the original Star Trek series, and look, we got Guinan out of it. We got Guinan because somebody thought of representation. Oh my God, awesome. So that's why representation matters. That's why it's important, because we need everybody to be able to see better versions of themselves that they can aspire to be. I didn't actually have any role models. I succeeded in spite of all the odds stacked against me, all right? I just did a thing because I was really, really, really stubborn, and nobody can ever tell me to stop. If someone was like, oh, Jules, you're just wasting your time, I'd just be like, whatever. Nobody cares what you think. But I'm the exception that proves the rule. I exist because I'm so stubborn, because I'm such a contrarian. There are a lot of people who wouldn't do comics, who wouldn't do art, who wouldn't write stories unless they saw other people like them doing it. And that's why I do the thing. So people can look at me and go, wait a minute, if the brown chick can do this, I'm also a brown person, I can do the thing. That's what's important, inspiring the next generation. That's why it matters.
Right. Also, I think about just when we think about the characters that we have to look towards, the characters that look like us. So there aren't many of them. Luke Cage. But so, and I think it's really important not to only see our best selves, but to see our vulnerable selves, to see ourselves, enough of ourselves as the better selves so that we can have our antagonists and have our villains and not feel like, wait, are you actually stereotyping me? And I can't wait for that day where we can just have a Black woman villain, Viola Davis. Like, you could just have Viola Davis, and it's like, there are enough
Wasn't she dope as Amanda Waller? Right?
And that movie was...
The movie had a lot of problems, but Viola Davis was like the best part of Suicide Squad. She really was.
But to see the best versions of ourselves, enough so that we can have these also great, crazy characters, that we can have alter egos. Like, we don't want super egos, we also want alter egos. And so we just need more and more and more so that we can also have anti-heroes too.
Yeah, and that's how also we get the Gus Springs of the world. Because I can't be the only Breaking Bad fan here. Come on. Right?
Camilla, can you introduce yourself? My name is Camilla Zhang. Long story short, started with comics via the library and Batman the Animated Series. That was my gateway. I was really lucky to have, I really want to go back to my library actually and find the librarian who included a bunch of graphic novels and manga and, but of course, like my mom, she used to sell newspapers in her grocery and, I'd always flip through the comics section. That was my favorite part. So, and I got into floppy comics, DC and Marvel, through Archie. I would say probably Archie, and then floppies through with watching Batman and stuff. So, and I loved comics and was kind of a geek in high school, but luckily went to a high school for nerds. So I found some kin over there. In college, I interned at DC. Was lucky to get an internship there. Worked at Marvel's legal department for about 3 years after that, and then went to art and design at DC Comics, back and forth, that's how it is sometimes. But and I had the opportunity to edit some books. Which books did you edit? Assistant. I did Batman Black and White, Batman Death by Design by by Chip Kidd and Dave Taylor, Batman Noel by Lee Bermejo, and the Before Watchmen series. So I got to work with some of my heroes, and that was illuminating. Sometimes it's like you're not sure if you want to meet your heroes, but like luckily I had a fairly good experience there. I know people hear a lot about DC. And you won a competition with Top Cow. Oh, yeah, sorry. That's right. So last year I was a runner-up for Top Cow's talent hunt, and so I wrote an 8-page story. It's going to be out in an anthology in December, so it's called Cyberforce Artifacts #0. And it's going to feature a lot of up-and-coming people, so that's actually a great way to, if you want to, quote-unquote, break into comics. It's really tough. It's really, really tough. I think especially for women and women of color, people of color. But it's got to be done through these roundabout channels. You kind of can't go head on. You kind of have to go through your own channels. A lot of people do their own webcomics, and that's kind of the easiest. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. But I think it's definitely a way to, take agency in your hands and say, I'm not going to play by anybody's rules, and I'm going to do my own thing and thrive that way. I actually really wish I had done that, but I went kind of maybe the more traditional route. And so you can do if you want to do your own webcomics, that's awesome. You could also, go through a bunch of smaller publishers, like Lock It Down, and
plug.
Yeah, plug. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many avenues besides the big two, and it's really important to support those independent avenues if we want to kind of see the change that we want to see.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Camilla just said about giving a little bit of advice. What advice would you give a future artist or writer about starting and maintaining a career in comics?
I would say don't let those voices, not like the voices that you get diagnosed for voices, but like your inner voice, you know what I mean? Don't let it.
Them too.
Yeah, that's true. You do need that. Yeah, we can't. Don't let that voice kind of talk you out or shut you down from your idea that's kind of bubbling up in your head. If you have an idea and you think it would be interesting or something that you would either want to do yourself or collaborate on with other people, then really give yourself a chance to actually make that happen and put some work into it. And my other piece of advice would be that if it's something that you really want to give a go for, you really have to be consistent. Try to make sure that you do something every day, draw something every day, write something every day. Even if you don't feel like it, you've been having a bad day, your job, stinks, or your home life is unpleasant or uncomfortable, try and find a place or a space either in where you live or a place you can go outside of that where you can put some time into your craft, because it's really important and you have to nurture it every day like a plant almost.
I was actually going to hit that same thing from the editorial side, that consistency, and particularly showing up is 90% of the job, and sometimes artists will succeed although they may not have that same spark or fire that other artists have, because they will get 100 pages done in the time allotted, and they'll just do it every day like a workhorse and not let the idea of it's got to be perfection drag them down or my muse isn't there. So part of it is building up that creativity and building up that consistency, and part of it is just being willing to just do it.
Yeah.
Just get it done.
Just do it. That would be my advice. Do it and don't ever stop. But piggybacking off of that, find a good support group, I think. A good community where you can share your work and feel encouraged and feel like, what you're doing is not really a waste of time. That you're like, yeah, I'm doing a good thing. Because for a long time, I created comics in a vacuum. And again, I exist in spite of everything. But, once I started finding communities that really cared about what I was doing, it really helped me improve my craft. It helped me to really, take better pride in what I do. Because, yeah, it's cool that, you can get into a thing and don't stop and blah, blah, blah. But if everyone around you just doesn't care about what you're doing, it's very demoralizing. So, yes, find your people. Find your support group. You got to go on the internet. Fine. We're there. Women in Comics International. What's up? We're here. So yeah, definitely find your people to help you, to help motivate you, to help keep you going. Otherwise, you're going to lose heart, and it's not going to be easy to keep going.
So for me, I'm basically, the advice to you is gonna just be me telling you what I did, so that you know the specifics of things that you can try. So I had an idea for a character, and I reached out to a collaborator to illustrate and for me to write. And having a collaborator was the best thing for me because we were holding each other accountable, and just off the bat, we were no longer in a vacuum. And then what we did is that we put that out into Kickstarter to raise money. And we raised like $5,000 to self-publish our first comic. So definitely find a collaborator, and then if you want, and do it on Kickstarter, and then put it out on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, because I'm telling you, those things are not just about the money. It's the best kind of marketing you can do for yourself, because it excites people and it brings about your new fans and your new community of people. So now they might not have $50, $100 to give you, but they have their eyes that they can give you, and they're looking out for you. And that really helped. That got people who wanted to connect with me and have been with me ever since. And also then just go to conventions. We started going to the smallest conventions. We went to a convention called the Black Comics Arts Festival in San Francisco. I don't know if anybody knows John Jennings, but he runs that. And so then we started meeting people. We met David Walker. We met LaShawn Thomas, who did Boondocks and Black Dynamite, and now is doing his own anime. We met all of these people. I met Amanda Steinberg was there, it was just this small inaugural convention. So definitely go to conventions. I've been to Regine's conventions in the Bronx Heroes. Exactly, just go. So now you're meeting all of these people, and they're like, oh, you're doing this thing. They don't care that like you're doing it like in your bed and like have no valid, validity. It's you told yourself yes, and there's no way to go back from there.
Don't wait for anybody's permission. Just do it.
So those are the three things I'd say: conventions, crowdfunding, and collaborators for sure.
3 C's.
Oh, did I just say that?
Kickstarter starts with a K, so it's more like CEKs.
Phonetically, yeah.
All right.
Okay, so I want to thank the ladies, first and foremost, before we take it to questions, for coming and being here. We do have a booth here at New York Comic Con. We're in aisle 200, booth 238, if you want to come by and check out some of the members' work.
Try the brownies.
If there is left, I have like 2 left. Okay, so we're going to start with questions.
First of all, I want to say thank you for this panel and coming, and the whole panel together is very diverse and it's amazing. All ages, all ethnicities. Thank you. It means a lot to me personally as a woman. I have 2 questions. I heard someone say diversity, and what about inclusion? That's one. What do you think about that? Because I think inclusion includes everybody. Or even why do we even have to use that word, period? The second question I have is, I heard you say the 3 C's. What if you're a writer but you can't draw to save your life? How do you find somebody to help you with that?
Well, that's why I had to collaborate, because I can't even draw a stick figure. So I found there, and I'm telling you, there's online, even Twitter. If you wanna tag us, say at whomever, and you're looking for an illustrator, like just get that out there, because you can find them. There's someone who like we will both be working for free. We will be broke, but we will be working for free together to make something that is ours. You can find yourself an artist.
Yeah, and also digitalwebbing.com is another place where a lot of people find collaborators, so you can try them.
And conceptart.org and Pencil Jack.
Great.
I just want to say one thing. You get to say whether you're broke or not broke. You're making a difference and you have a talent that you're giving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are spiritually wealthy.
Yes, very much so.
Seriously.
Hello. I just wanted to ask, so at my college, I'm working on putting together a slideshow of characters of color throughout the comic book medium, and specifically women of color is where I'm lacking in terms of finding characters to put together. So I'm just asking you, from your expertise, can you like name drop and give me some besides like, the Storms, the Vixens, the Moon Girls, just
There's a website called World of Black Superheroes, and they have a pretty comprehensive list. There's mainstream characters and there are indie characters.
You can hijack
so you can
my
definitely
stuff
check that out. You can also come by our booth 238.
Okay, so yeah, Action Lab Comics, Princeless. Go over to the Action Lab booth. I think it's like it's in the 3,000 rows. Go get Princeless. It stars a black princess, Princess Adrienne, and she saves her sisters with the power of dragon. Okay, go get it. Also, what else? You can hijack my stuff from my website, ValkyrieSquadron.com. They're ladies, they're of color. Yeah.
I really like Aya of Yop City.
Oh, yeah.
It takes place on the Ivory Coast in like the 60s, and it's by Marguerite Aboué. And I think, her illustrator is Clement Oubleli. I probably just butchered his last name, but anyway. It's wonderful art, great story, slice of life, the Black experience and another in Africa, and it's very Cosmo, they talk about friendships, love, family relationships, misogyny, jealousy, like all kinds of topics that I think very relatable.
Emmett Comics. It's an all-female publisher. Yes. Emmett, E-M-E-T, Comics. All their comics. Oh yeah, and there's a particular comic that they just put up to Kickstarter, Adventures in Cat Sitting. Oh, does anybody know this? Oh my God, you have to read Adventures in Cat Sitting. It's so great. And the lead of that comic is a Latina, so representing my peoples. So yeah, there's other Emmett comics. I think Xana also has a Black female protagonist. So yeah, that.
And depending on how much you want to cover, don't neglect things that are for younger kids. Things by things by First Second, things by Learner, things by, there's some foreign comics being published on paper cuts and others. But make sure you cast your net wide because there's a lot of focus now on trying to get representation and diversity in comics for younger kids.
I think about Princeless. One of the issues is the author is a white man, and so some people had some, I think it's a great story, but okay. I know that there's that. Yes.
I know there's some concern that because Jeremy Whitley's a white dude, I've actually met his wife Alicia. She's a Black woman. He gets a lot of his inspiration from his wife. I'm not saying it justifies it, but I'm just saying that he's at least done his research because he married a Black woman and constantly gets his feedback from his family, so that counts, right?
I'm sure. Jeremy Whitley. I forget his last name.
Jeremy Whitley.
Yeah.
Whitley.
So I'm a special education teacher, and I started. Thank you. I started a Comics in the Classroom initiative at my school. The problem is, my students don't really feel that they're represented in comics because they have disabilities. Mm-hmm. Some of them ADHD, some of them in the wheelchair. So, do you have any recommendations for where I can point them to get inspiration? And then my second question is, so right now when we publish, we just kind of like print it and share it around the school, but some of the kids would like to go beyond that. Do you have any advice for the kids to be able to have their own voice and promote their own work outside of the school walls?
How would you promote your own independent comic? Wow, that's a panel unto itself. Well, again, this is a place where communities can help. Finding communities of webcomicers, getting on Twitter, just talking to us, just be like, hey, Jules, how do I do my thing? Or Jules, can you give me a shout out? Read my comic, let me know what you think.
Tumblr,
getting on Tumblr, just putting it out there. That definitely, social media and the World Wide Web has made a lot of resources available to new up-and-coming creators to just get out there and post their stuff. It doesn't matter if you're a kid still in school. You can just put out something, and if people like it, they'll read it.
And I think we also go back to representation, inclusivity, diversity, and that sometimes I would encourage people to include, go beyond race and gender in a story that they might be working for us. For example, we were doing a series of horror novels, and I said, well, so what if you were confined to a wheelchair and the vampire's chasing you? How are you going to get away? How would you handle that situation? And there weren't writers who felt that they could tackle that sympathetically, I think. So getting the kids to write stories from their unique perspective of things people might not have thought of will certainly help have more representation. I think it's actually something a lot of writers aren't tackling. I can't think of enough examples. Can you ladies think of some good books?
Well, Oracle from the Batman family. She is a woman in a wheelchair, but she does a lot of really awesome stuff.
Mighty Jack by Ben Hatke, a white guy, but he's just done a new series for about 8 to 13-year-olds, a retelling of Jack the Giant Killer in modern times, and it all centers around the hero's little sister who's autistic, and how she interacts with the beanstalk and the creatures that come through, and I think is a very sympathetic portrait of the family, her and her brother's relationship with her. and how she can communicate, but maybe not in a way that other people are understanding.
One of the parts of the questions you asked, how do they get their voice out there? I think the fact that they're in a school is a really good start, and I don't know if this is just a classroom kind of microcosmic thing, but it
started in my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So our principal kind of like tweets whenever they do a new comic strip.
Okay, I think
that's pretty cool.
Well, I think it's important for like
my principal's never tweeted anything
for the voices to be heard within the school first, so that not the principal but the other students know about this class of kids who are
in the school announcements daily. Yeah, so
It is.
the school knows, but
Right.
like some of the kids have been interested because they're like seriously interested in becoming comic book writers and illustrators. And cool. I read them, but I teach. So I couldn't get them beyond the classroom. I'm like, oh, I can help you here, but I don't really know
Well,
how to
let's
help
talk
you
after
beyond.
because we do workshops in the school system. We do it for autistic programs and everything. So let's talk afterwards. We hook you up. You're welcome.
Amazing panel. I've been looking forward to this for pretty much the entire weekend. So thank you very much.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Oh man, awesome. So I think something that's sort of been particularly troubling is just the idea of safe spaces or safe spaces that exist that have been sort of infiltrated or compromised. Just even just a place like this, like Comic-Con, there have been 2 incidents already, both on the first day, where you had one panel sort of getting into the Marvel industry where, the whole panel is just white guys, just cisgender white guys, right? It was just ridiculous.
I heard about that one.
And then a black woman came up and asked them, why is the panel all white dudes? And the guy who's pretty much a representative of Marvel Comics is just like, well, I sent an email out to one, and she didn't get back to me. And it was just this flippant, disavowal of her speech. And then there was a Peter David incident, which is all over Facebook and Twitter. And it was just there was this guy, a Romani person in the audience who was talking about how they were portrayed in Marvel Comics. And Peter David just went on this, probably the most puerile, just disgusting rant about how he didn't know what he was talking about and he knew more about the Romani experience. It was absolutely ridiculous. But I think my question to you is just if you are an artist or a creator or whatever in general, and you are trying to get into one of these industries, what are sort of avenues, where are the safe spaces in those particular industries? If, we have safe spaces outside of industries, and I understand that, but if those spaces are being compromised, what are the spaces inside those industries, and how would you go about creating safe spaces within those industries?
Carve it out.
Well, actually, there are some Facebook groups that I'm a part of. Actually, we have our own you create Facebook groups for each other, and you invite people to join, and they invite other people to join, and you set some guidelines, obviously. For example, actually, I don't know if you want to share our internal guidelines.
Sure. Sure. For us, when we started about 4.5 years ago, we were asked to do a panel at a convention. I was asked, and we did the panel. And all of a sudden, more people wanted to see us. They want to see more stuff from us. So we said, okay, this is cool. And then we started, I guess, maybe talking amongst ourselves just a little bit. And we said, we can do some more with this. So we started with about 8 people, and then now it's grown to 137. We make our space very safe amongst each other. And we also control a lot of our spaces. As I said before, we do a lot of events, a lot of workshops. We have our own Comic-Con. We have our own guidelines for that Comic-Con. We have a sexual harassment policy where I threaten people at the beginning of the show. Let them know, look, you sexual harass somebody, you better hope we call the police. We roll that deep. We roll that deep. We don't play. We don't mess around. So a lot of times you have to create your own spaces. Yeah, exactly. And people who are searching for that space, they will find you, and you'll find them as well. You just have to put it out there. And for us, it just happened organically and just happened naturally.
Yeah, the reality is those safe spaces aren't there. They don't exist. And so you have to create them you have to have that attitude of, I'm not paying you no mind. and create the space that you want for your ideal self, and then be so lit that they invite you in. That's how you do it.
That's right.
I don't know if you know Ronald Wimberly, but like he's the perfect example of someone who like worked in DC and worked in that shit, and he's like, I'm not down for that. And he's left since. But it's like, the reality is it's not there. And so we have to build our own infrastructure first in order to dismantle the problematic infrastructure.
Exactly.
And then also don't feel any kind of way about being a double spy. If you want to work for DC and then want to do your own thing and do both, like, you get to make those choices. Don't vilify yourself for making specific choices for your own career.
Especially if it means putting food on your table.
Yeah, if you
make
be a double
that
spy, be a double
money.
spy.
Take their money.
If that's what you want to do,
hell yeah.
I will support you.
If DC were to show up right now and say, Jules, we want you to draw Power Girl with her boobs like this. Fine, I will take your money. It's always going in my pocket. I'm going to get myself a new tattoo with it to be awesome. But the fact is, you do have to carve out your own safe spaces.
We have one last question.
What I'm going to do is have them just present their questions, and then we have the last 3 minutes.
Okay.
I'm so glad.
Hi. So I'm not a creator, but I have a business within Geeky Women, and I see.
And you're a member.
And I am a member as well. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin. I know that it's an issue for a lot of people, and you all kind of touched on it, of like being everything to everyone. And as a Black woman, like having, or a woman of color of any race or ethnicity, having this like responsibility of having to be every woman of color in a character or in your business or in your creation. And I was just kind of wondering like how you all deal with that, like weight, that responsibility.
And then the next question is?
So a lot of you are from NYC and the BX, and I'm from NYC, and like sometimes the Bronx and certain boroughs just feel lonely when it comes to geek culture. Like, you feel a little bit stranded sometimes. Like, your event was awesome when I went, but like it kind of feels like until recently, it certainly wasn't cool to be a geek. Certain ways it's cool to be a geek of color. It wasn't cool.
Many places
it's like there's many places still not, and it's I think part of it is toxic masculinity in our communities, where it's like, it's not cool, and if you say it is, I'm gonna, one up you for it, or put you down for it. So, yeah, that's my question. Like, what do you do when you're confronted with this kind of like negativity around your geeky culture?
Let's answer the first question first. I was just gonna say, for Robin, I don't think like that. I just create the character and everybody can suck it. I mean, the character is
get out of my head.
Who that person is. I never thought that way. No one has ever presented to me either. So this character is that character. This person is that person. If you're not used to seeing a woman of color doing certain things or being something different than what you think is supposed to be correct, a bunch of stereotypes, I'm sorry, go pick up another book. So that's just me personally. And to answer the other young lady's question, well, first of all, there's a website, there's an app called Nerd Out, and it has a full list. The creator is one of our members too. It has a full list of all the different things, fun, nerdy things going on in the country and outside the country. So you definitely should check it out. It's free, and you were going to answer her last part of the question.
So really quickly, number one, I think there's still an institutional problem where you are representing all women of color, all people, whatever you are, and the people at the top will look at you and you failed, and they will say never again. And number two, there's a space up in the Northwest Bronx that's like can be used for art studios and cons, and I haven't yet spoken to any of these wonderful ladies here yet about it, but I really want to try to make more spaces for geeking out in the Bronx and farther north in New York than Brooklyn. So I love Brooklyn, but we need a little bit more, so that's something I really want to do in 2017 and make that happen, because you have to make it yourself.
So if you want to talk to us some more, you can walk with us outside or go into our booth. Okay.
The Black Girl Nerds podcast is produced by Jamie Broadnax. Various episodes are edited by Jamie Broadnax, M.R. Daniel, and John Bauer. The opening theme song to our show is written and performed by Samus. Various instrumentals are performed by Samus, Sky Blue, and Shubzilla. You can find episodes of the Black Girl Nerds podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spreaker, and Spotify.
That was a HeadGum podcast.